Everything you knew about sexuality is wrong. The Stoics, often perceived as emotionally detached and cold, actually hold a powerful and secretive perspective on sex that most people have never heard of. Buckle up, because today we're diving into the dark side of desire, unveiling the hidden Stoic strategies for mastering your sexual energy. This video will challenge everything you thought you knew about the Stoic approach to pleasure and might just change your perspective on how to live a fulfilling life. Segment 1, the common misconception. When you think of a Stoic, what image pops into your mind? Probably some ancient philosopher, draped in a toga, sitting on a rock, staring off into the distance with a serious, unyielding expression. You might imagine someone who suppresses all emotions, shuns pleasure, and especially avoids anything that could be remotely fun like sex. But here's the twist, this image is far from accurate. Many people assume that Stoicism is all about rejecting pleasure, and that when it comes to sex, Stoics would consider it a distraction at best, or even a sin. This misunderstanding likely comes from the Stoic emphasis on virtue and reason over fleeting desires. But that's where most people get it wrong. The Stoics didn't view pleasure as inherently bad, and they certainly didn't believe in denying themselves the joys of life, especially when it came to something as natural as sex. So, what did the Stoics really think about sex? Let's dive into the truth. Segment 2, Pleasure and Stoicism. It's complicated. To understand the Stoic perspective on sex, we first need to clear up a fundamental misunderstanding. Stoicism isn't about rejecting pleasure, but about understanding it, managing it, and ensuring that it doesn't control you. Think about it like this: you're at an all-you-can-eat buffet, surrounded by an endless array of delicious dishes. Now, you wouldn't just pile everything onto your plate, right? You'd make careful choices, picking the dishes you truly want to enjoy, and savor them without overindulging. That's exactly how Stoics viewed pleasure, including sexual pleasure. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, and one of the most famous Stoics, had a very grounded view on sex. He understood that it's a fundamental part of human nature, something that's deeply rooted in our biology. And this is important, he also believed that sex, like any other pleasure, should be approached with balance and moderation. The Stoics taught that when you allow pleasure to become an obsession, it transforms from a source of joy into a source of suffering. Now, let's get into the concept of preferred indifference. This might sound like a paradox, but it's a crucial Stoic idea. Stoics believe that things like health, wealth, and yes, sex are preferred indifference. This means they are good and desirable, but not essential to living a happy and virtuous life. So, while sex is natural and can be pleasurable, it shouldn't become the central focus of your existence. The key is to enjoy it without letting it define you. Segment 3, Sexuality and Stoic Thought. Unpacking the myths. Let's talk about Seneca, another Stoic heavyweight. Seneca often gets a bad rap for being stern and rigid, but his views on pleasure might surprise you. He wasn't against enjoying life's pleasures, including sex. In fact, he believed that pleasure, when encountered in the right way, should be embraced, but with caution. Seneca famously said that pleasure should never be the driving force in your life, but if it comes your way, and if it aligns with your rational values, there's no reason to shy away from it. Let's say you're in a committed relationship, and you and your partner have a healthy sex life. For Seneca, the key would be to ensure that this aspect of your relationship doesn't overshadow your other values and goals. Enjoy the pleasure, yes, but don't let it control you. Here's another myth we need to bust. Stoics didn't believe that you should reject all forms of pleasure. They were far more concerned with your relationship to that pleasure. If you approach sex rationally with self-control, and as part of a balanced life, it's perfectly in line with Stoic principles. The problem only arises when pleasure starts to dictate your actions, pulling you away from what truly matters: virtue, wisdom, and living in accordance with nature. Segment 4, Evolution of Desire, a Stoic perspective. To truly grasp the Stoic view on sexuality, we need to step back and look at how human desires evolved. Imagine living 10,000 years ago. During the transition from the Paleolithic era to the Neolithic era, humanity was moving from a nomadic lifestyle to settled farming communities. Our instincts, which once helped us survive in a world full of dangers, began to shift. In those early days, the pleasure derived from food, sex, and other basic needs was crucial for survival. Finding a beehive full of honey might have saved your life, and the sweet taste was nature's way of rewarding you. The same applied to sex. Successful reproduction ensured the survival of the species. But as human society evolved, these instincts began to be exploited by the comforts and excesses of civilization. Seneca pointed out that nature has wisely linked pleasure with necessity. We are programmed to seek pleasure because it was beneficial to our ancestors' survival. However, as our environment changed, our instincts didn't always keep up. Fast forward to today, and we're surrounded by constant temptations, whether it's the food we eat, the luxuries we indulge in, or the sexual pleasures we seek. The Stoics understood that these pleasures, while natural, could easily become destructive if not approached with wisdom and self-control. Segment 5, Stoic Sexual Ethics, the Right Way to Approach Pleasure. So how does all of this translate into practical advice for living a Stoic life today? Let's start with this. Stoicism isn't about saying no to sex. It's about saying yes to sex in a way that aligns with your principles, values, and long-term goals. If you're in a relationship, the Stoics would ask you to consider, is this sexual encounter helping you build a deeper connection with your partner, or is it just a fleeting thrill? Are you staying true to your values, or are you sacrificing something important for momentary pleasure? One of the most powerful Stoic quotes comes from Musonius Rufus, who said, "If you achieve something good with effort, the effort passes quickly, but the good endures. If you do something bad for pleasure, the pleasure passes quickly, but the bad endures." This quote is a reminder that the choices we make in pursuit of pleasure have long-term consequences. The Stoics weren't against pleasure. They were against the idea of pleasure controlling your life. Think of sex like a fine wine, something to be enjoyed, appreciated, and savored, but never to be indulged in to the point of losing control. The Stoics would argue that if you're engaging in sexual pleasure, make sure it's done with intention and within the context of a life lived according to reason and virtue. Segment 6. Sexuality and self-control taking the reins. Now, let's talk about control. The Stoics placed a huge emphasis on understanding what is within your control and what is not. When it comes to sexuality, this principle is crucial. You can't always control your desires. They're natural and often arise without any conscious effort. But you can control how you respond to those desires. Imagine you're single and find yourself in a situation where a sexual opportunity arises. A Stoic would advise you to pause and consider, does this align with my values? Will this bring me closer to my goals? Or could it potentially lead to regret or negative consequences? If the situation aligns with your principles, then there's no reason to reject it. But if it's something that might cause you to stray from your path, it's best to let it pass. The Stoics believe that true freedom comes from self-mastery, from not being enslaved by our desires, but rather being the master of them. This doesn't mean denying yourself pleasure altogether. It means enjoying it in a way that doesn't compromise your values or your long-term happiness. When you control your desires rather than letting them control you, you're free to live a life that's truly fulfilling. Segment 7. The Stoic balance pleasure and virtue in harmony. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, I get it, balance is key. But how do I find that balance in my own life? The answer lies in the Stoic practice of self-reflection and mindfulness. The Stoics were big on regularly examining their actions, thoughts, and desires. This practice helps you stay aware of your motivations and ensures that you're living in alignment with your values. Let's break it down. Imagine you've had a busy week and you're looking forward to a relaxing weekend. You could spend it indulging in every pleasure imaginable, eating, drinking, and perhaps even some casual encounters. But before you dive in, the Stoics would encourage you to reflect. What do I truly want from this weekend? How can I enjoy myself without losing sight of what's important to me? It's not about depriving yourself, it's about making conscious choices that lead to a deeper sense of fulfillment. For the Stoics, this balance wasn't just about avoiding excess. It was about ensuring that every action you take contributes to your overall well-being and virtue. Sex, when approached with this mindset, becomes not just a source of pleasure, but a meaningful part of a well-lived life. Segment 8. The long-term view, pleasure in perspective. Here's a powerful Stoic insight. The pleasures of the moment are fleeting, but the consequences of our actions can last a lifetime. This doesn't mean you should never indulge in pleasure, but rather that you should always keep the long term in mind. The Stoics believe that by focusing on the bigger picture, you can make better decisions that lead to a more satisfying and virtuous life. Think of it like investing. When you invest in something, you're not looking for a quick return, you're thinking about the long-term benefits. The same goes for how you approach pleasure. If you engage in sex or any other form of pleasure, think about how it fits into your broader goals. Will this momentary pleasure contribute to your long-term happiness and fulfillment? Or will it be a distraction that pulls you off course? Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds us to ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? This simple question can be a powerful tool in managing your desires and ensuring that you're living a life that's aligned with your values. It's not about suppressing your desires, but about guiding them in a way that serves your higher purpose. Segment 9. Adaptability and Stoic resilience. Let's face it, life doesn't always go according to plan. Relationships can be complicated, desires can be overwhelming, and the world around us is constantly changing. The Stoics understood this, which is why they emphasized adaptability and resilience as key components of their philosophy. When it comes to sexuality, this adaptability means being flexible in how you approach pleasure. There may be times when it's appropriate to indulge in sexual pleasure, and other times when it's better to refrain. The key is to remain true to your values and to be willing to adjust your approach based on the situation. This adaptability also applies to how you deal with setbacks. Imagine you're in a relationship and things don't go as planned. Maybe there's a misunderstanding or a disagreement that leads to tension. A Stoic approach would be to stay calm, reflect on what happened, and find a way to move forward without letting the situation spiral out of control. The Stoics taught that true resilience comes from within, from a mind that is trained to remain calm in the face of adversity, and a heart that is steadfast in its commitment to virtue. This resilience allows you to navigate the ups and downs of life, including the complexities of sexuality, with grace and wisdom. Segment 10, Stoic Serenity, the ultimate goal. Finally, let's talk about serenity, the ultimate goal of Stoic practice. Serenity for the Stoics wasn't just a state of calmness, but a deep inner peace that comes from living in harmony with nature and with oneself. This serenity is the foundation upon which all other virtues are built. When it comes to sexuality, this means approaching it with a sense of peace and balance. It's about recognizing that while sex can be a source of joy, it's not the source of your happiness. True happiness, according to the Stoics, comes from living a life that's guided by reason, virtue, and a deep understanding of what truly matters. So how do you achieve this serenity? It starts with self-awareness, understanding your desires, recognizing your triggers, and being mindful of how you respond to them. It's about practicing self-control, not as a form of denial, but as a way to ensure that your actions are always aligned with your values. And it's about embracing the present moment, with all its challenges and opportunities, while keeping your eyes fixed on the bigger picture. Segment 11, Closing Thoughts, the Stoic Secret to Your Sexuality. As we wrap up, let's revisit the main takeaway. Stoicism doesn't demand that you reject pleasure, including sexual pleasure. Instead, it offers a blueprint for how to engage with pleasure in a way that enriches your life rather than detracts from it. It's about balance, wisdom, and self-control, qualities that allow you to enjoy the pleasures of life while staying true to your values. The Stoic secret to sexuality is simple. Don't let pleasure control you. Master your desires, and you'll find that you can enjoy life's pleasures without being enslaved by them. Sex, like any other pleasure, can be a part of a virtuous life if approached with the right mindset. Now it's your turn. What do you think about the Stoic approach to sexuality? Do you agree that balance and self-control are key, or do you think there's more to it? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let's get the conversation started. If you found this video insightful, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into Stoic wisdom. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay balanced, stay wise.